Hi there. My name is Bob Dunsmore, and I have some incredibly good news for the nation and for the planet. We can solve the climate crisis within 2 or 3 years. We could see a reversal of the climate change. I came to this understanding after reading a book by a leading climate scientist, John Berger. Let me read a little bit about what John Berger has to say. Here's a picture of him. John is an environmental science and policy specialist, prize-winning author and journalist, a graduate of Stanford University and the University of California. Berger has written for Scientific American, HuffPost, the Los Angeles Times, the Boston Globe, the Christian Science Monitor, and USA Today magazine. He has been a consultant to the National Research Council of the National Academy of Sciences and the U.S. Congress, as well as a professor at the University of Maryland. John co-founded the Nuclear Information and Resource Service and founded Restoring the Earth to bring environmental restoration to national attention. John has written on page 229 of this book, Solving the Climate Crisis. What if there were a way to safely pull billions of tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, to substantially reduce or even eliminate global warming? What if this approach costs relatively little and could be used around the world? What if it also put billions of dollars in cash into the hands of countless working Americans and people worldwide? What if it even slashed fossil fuel consumption and made the world more resilient to climate change? I have to correct that. He said more resilient to climate stress. Well, it turns out there is a system that can do all that. It's called carbon farming. And it just might be key to restabilizing the climate. In this process, it can revitalize rural economies while also producing healthier, more nutritious crops. And amazingly, it is low cost, low tech, and low risk. The carbon farmer works with simple inputs: land, seed, compost, moisture, and sometimes specially selected microorganisms that speed a depleted soil's return to health. Carbon farming also doesn't pull land out of production, nor does it disturb natural ecosystems. It's a down-to-earth solution to global warming that employs nature's omnipresent carbon cycle, which constantly shuttles molecules of carbon into and out of the atmosphere, and also out of soil, freshwater, and oceans. Yet carbon farming is still neither widely known nor widely practiced today. He goes on to explain that other forms of carbon farming are, for example, reforesting the world, where trees are being cut down, according to the United Nations, primarily because there are billions of people going out there and cutting firewood, fuel from trees, in order to feed their families. It's amazing to me, and I discovered this having worked in 20 different countries in community development, that the most essential fuel in the world, in my opinion, is for cooking, for feeding our families. And yet, that's the only fuel that's not subsidized. Obviously, because it doesn't make that much money for corporations, I suppose. If we were to subsidize cooking fuel, communities told me in many different countries that they would be glad to reforest the areas around them because it would prevent flooding. Like in eastern Bolivia, 200,000 families are flooded every year because the forests are gone. And the rain coming down off the Andes just floods entire eastern Bolivia. There's all kinds of cholera and dead animals and disease that's spread that way. And so they'd be glad to reforest if they had a way to cook. But right now, the only way they know for cooking, because they can't afford the hot plates with gas tanks and all of that and propane, the only way is to go out there and cut the trees down and even girdle trees so that you have cooking fuel for the next year. We tried to protect a forest in El Salvador for 7 years, and every year they would burn part of the forest in order to have cooking fuel for that same year or the next year. And so if there were a way to subsidize the fuel for cooking, and there are some beautiful machines available all around the world that compress agricultural waste, like sawdust, the bagasse from sugarcane production, which is like a sawdust, rice chaff, coffee pulp, all of that makes beautiful fuel logs. But the people can't afford to buy them. In fact, all the logs that are being made right now around the world by these fuel log machines are for industry. The people can't afford to buy it. So if even that were subsidized, we would actually have what would be, I'm not sure if this is the correct term, but carbon positive fuel logs, because they use agricultural waste and they protect forests to be able to continue to draw down carbon out of the atmosphere. The oceans, if we can if we ban certain parts of the ocean, within 1 year, according to some studies, you could regenerate the population of fish, and all the microorganisms in the ocean could come back, and that is the biggest drawdown sink of carbon dioxide in the world. But if all we did were to regenerate the soil in arable land, which is now dead, thanks to Monsanto and other great agribusinesses that have completely killed the soil around the world, if we could regenerate even a small percentage. One scientist told me that just 1% of India's arable land, if it were regenerated and the microorganisms could draw down carbon and put that carbon into the tissue of plants, those plants would then draw down more. The same for trees, which put the carbon into the root system and into the fungal mycelium underneath the trees for storage for years, even thousands of years. And that if only 1%, I was told, of India's arable land were regenerated, it could absorb all the carbon dioxide emitted by humans on the planet. That blew me away. And here we have this elegant solution. I have also found out, by the way, that our present policy of cutting emissions won't help cool the planet in time to prevent a tilting point within 3 or 4 years. Why? Because all of the carbon that is in the atmosphere right now will not dissipate for 300 or more years. And by building EVs and batteries and windmills and solar panels, we are actually dumping billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere that will not dissipate for hundreds of years. We don't have that time. But drawing down carbon dioxide, we could see, if it were implemented by the Biden administration, which is what I'm hoping we can do before a climate denial president takes office, then we could see a reversal of climate change, I believe, in 2 to 3 years. We'd begin to see that change with all that's being drawn down into soil, now alive and full of organisms to transfer the carbon to the tissue of plants. And with the reforestation projects, that'd be an extra amount of carbon being drawn down. We can do this. All it takes is the political will and the support of government to bring this about around, not just nationally, but hopefully around the world. And NPR discussed this proposal, saying that it would actually solve the immigration problem, because millions of farmers just can't grow their food anymore. The seeds won't even reproduce, and they can't afford the chemicals that these agribusinesses are selling them. And so millions have left their fields and their countries to look for work in the United States and in other countries. It would solve the immigration problem by mandating that all the soil be regenerated. We would have organic farming, regenerative farming all across the country. It would increase the nutrition of the plants that we eat. We would get the microorganisms transferred into the tissue of plants to help our own biome systems transfer vitamins and minerals to our bodies. Communities that have agriculture which is organic or regenerative would have to be locally based, and it's been proven that locally based agriculture stabilizes a community's economy. So there's that. There are so many different benefits. For example, millions of jobs would be created almost overnight, because organic agriculture is much more labor intensive than chemical agriculture. We can't have big machines out there doing organic agriculture because we're wanting to control insects and herbs instead of herbicide and insecticide killing all this life. And so there are many different benefits of this. I am using a camera to get this word out because I know time is short before Trump takes office, and I just don't see much hope for an adoption of this kind of a simple, elegant solution to climate change that we need to take on now as a nation. And I'm hoping that if you're interested in this, that you'll get the word out, spread this video, or I'm not even sure how I'm going to get it out to the nation yet, but I just couldn't see getting into a podcast right now. So I'm using my camera to make a video, and we'll see how I get that out there. But you could write the Heart Mind Alliance at gmail.com. That's a nonprofit that we have started to promote this idea. That's the Heart Mind Alliance at gmail.com. And I look forward to working with you, answering questions, seeing how we can promote this and how we can get it to the Biden administration to consider this. It's just such an elegant solution. I have grandchildren, and I want to look into their eyes someday and say, you have a beautiful future ahead. I cannot do that right now. Thank you.